If you haven't talked to your kids about drugs, make an appointment.
Yo, Mom, you want to see me?
And if you don't know what to say, ask us. For a free parent's guide to drug prevention, call 1-800-624-0100.
My name is Jesse Cordy, and what I'm going to tell you is real. On January 4th, 1987, a passenger train en route between Washington and New York collided with a freight train. In the trial that followed, the engineer admitted to having smoked marijuana and overlooking security measures. They say that marijuana doesn't hurt anyone. But this time, 16 people died. Among them, Laura Cordy, my wife.
Now you can own the definitive documentary on the King, a production as hard-driving as the man himself, Richard Petty, the legend. This limited edition 2-volume home video includes the official Petty collector's card. And if you order now, you'll receive this free commemorative poster. To order, call area code 704-541-6600 or send $38.95 plus $5 shipping and handling to Richard Petty, the legend. 7621 Little Avenue, Suite 516, Charlotte, North Carolina 28226.
What began on a beach in Daytona more than 50 years ago has become America's most popular spectator sport, NASCAR Winston Cup Racing. Now see how it all got started in this thrilling home video. From Thunder Road to Victory Lane, the NASCAR story is the first of a 4-volume set and a must for every fan. To order, call 1-800-764-5441 or send $19.98 plus $4 shipping and handling to the address shown on your screen. Visa and MasterCard accepted. It was a year full of drama.
Dale Jarrett's going to win the Daytona 500. Rusty Spence
a wild ride to the finish.
And flips wildly right at the start-finish line.
A year when two of the sport's best lost their lives. It was a glimpse into racing's future and an affirmation of one of the greatest drivers of all time. These are the stories of the year in NASCAR 1993.
Green. 4,200, second gear. Great job. Let's go get the 3 now. Let's go put a lap on it. 3 to go, bud. 3 to go. Did it, guys. We did it.
This is Daytona International Speedway. It's quiet now. The drivers who normally speed through this tri-oval are taking a much-deserved break after a grueling 1993 season. Hi, everybody. I'm Eli Gold. Welcome to Daytona. Welcome to our review of this 1993 campaign. Over the course of the next hour, we'll be meeting the winners, the new faces. We'll review all the races. We'll relive the excitement of Indianapolis. We'll also look back on a tragic chapter in our sport when two rising young stars lost their lives off the racetrack. All of those stories and more in the next 60 minutes on a grueling road to a championship that all began right here in Daytona. Speed Weeks 1993, Daytona International Speedway. Once again, thousands of race fans have made the journey to this 450-acre plot of land on Florida's East Coast to watch the Super Bowl of stock car racing. The sights and sounds familiar to Daytona are here, but this year, the ocean breeze carries with it a sense of change. For starters, Richard Petty, the man synonymous with Daytona, would not be driving on the track that he conquered so many times. Instead, as he retires, the King would play a new role as car owner. Prior to the '92 season-ending race in Atlanta, Richard passed his steering wheel to Rick Wilson. After weeks of media attention, Wilson is ready to take the Petty Pontiac bearing the number 44 into the future. The Petty legacy at Daytona, though, would not soon be forgotten. Richard's son Kyle made sure of that by winning the pole position for the 500-mile race. Only 7 drivers have ever won the Daytona 500 from the pole in the race's 35-year history. So all week long, the question is put to Kyle, can he break the pole jinx?
You know, you can sit on the pole and win the race. It's an elite group to get in that division of the guys that sit on the pole and win, but I think we can do it.
Kyle's winning optimism is echoed by other Winston Cup veterans. It is, after all, a new year, and anything is possible. 3 former Busch Series standouts, Bobby Labonte, Kenny Wallace, and Jeff Gordon, would form the nucleus of the '93 rookie class. Gordon's introductory race at Daytona, the first of the Gatorade Twin 125s, would leave a lasting impression and would see him in victory lane.
It's unbelievable. We've got a good car. At Daytona, your car, the way it drives is everything, and being lucky, and we were all of those today.
Driving a real smart race, little buddy.
If you were on my radio, Skinny, you would have heard a whole lot of screaming.
We did it! Wow! Yes! Yes!
While the rookie dazzled, veteran Dale Earnhardt dominated. His familiar black Chevrolet Lumina found its way to victory lane twice during speed weeks, making him the man to beat in the upcoming 500.
Time's coming. This is our 14th try, and you know, we feel confident we will try this coming Sunday, and if we don't, we'll try the next year. So we're not going to give up.
Gentlemen, start your engine.
All the testing, all the analysis and preliminary racing is over. The day has come to race again at Daytona. And though there's change in the air, tradition remains a constant at stock car racing's most prestigious event.
Thank you, sir.
Lee Petty, winner of the first Daytona 500, is present to watch his son Richard, 7-time Daytona 500 winner, drop the green flag for his son Kyle and the entire 41-car field. On the first lap, a cluster of drivers jockey for the lead, but youth would prevail. Jeff Gordon leads the first lap, but outside pole sitter Dale Jarrett has other ideas. On the next lap, he captures the lead from Gordon to begin a long afternoon of lead changes. But trouble strikes early. The Ford of Jimmy Hensley cuts a tire, smacks into the wall out of turn number 1. The damage to the car ends the day for the man from Ridgeway, Virginia. The race continues incident-free. Single file drafting, characteristic of racing on this 2.5-mile superspeedway, allows for a lot of leapfrogging for position. By the halfway point, with Kyle Petty in the lead, the first place position has changed hands 22 times. Smooth racing would soon spell disaster. On lap 141, Rick Wilson loses control of his car and hits the wall, collecting Bobby Hamilton. The number 44 Pontiac limps his way back to the garage for repairs. IndyCar driver Al Unser Jr. making a heck of a run, but his afternoon ends with trouble as he gets hit from behind. He'll collide with Bobby Hillin Jr. Both cars slide out of control off the track and back onto the grass. Then Hillin's Ford can't stop, and up comes Kyle Petty. The two make contact one more time. The race's most frightening incident of the day happens 11 laps later. Rusty Wallace, running 6th, gets bumped and goes airborne, tumbling, barrel rolling 6 times before coming to a stop on the grass along the back straightaway. While the rest of the field heads to the caution flag, thanks to the safety built into these Winston Cup cars, Rusty Wallace just walks away. In the waning moments of the race, it has come down to a 4-car battle. Dale Earnhardt leads Jeff Gordon, Dale Jarrett, and Jeff Bodine. Jarrett makes a move on Gordon and takes second as Dale's mother, Martha, prays for the outcome. On the final lap, Jeff Bodine tries to make a move to the inside but can't get enough drafting help to push him out in front. Then it's Jarrett's turn to make a charge. Race announcer Ned Jarrett urges his son to the finish line.
Come on, Dale. Go, baby, go. All right, come on. I know he's got it to the floorboard. He can't do any more. Come on, take her to the inside. Don't let him get on the inside of you coming around this turn. Here he comes, Earnhardt. It's the Dale and Dale show. It's become off of turn 4. You know who I'm pulling for. It's Dale Jarrett. Bring her to the inside, Dale. Don't let him get down there. He's going to make it. Dale Jarrett's going to win the Daytona 500. All right. Oh, look at Martha. Oh, dear. Oh, can you believe it? Way to go. Hey. Man.
Dale Jarrett denies Dale Earnhardt again and brings home a Super Bowl-like victory for NFL coach and car owner Joe Gibbs.
I think the thing that I'll remember the most is just crossing the start-finish line there on the last lap. Unbelievable feeling, and then just everything after that for about 3 weeks. How crazy everything was, and the special feeling that it was for my family and I, and just seeing my wife Kelly's eyes when I got in victory lane was worth the whole time.
At the North Carolina Motor Speedway in Rockingham, North Carolina, pole sitter Mark Martin leads the way in the Goodwrench 500. Though Martin is the front runner, most eyes are on Kyle Petty, who is making his way to the front after starting 11th. Petty, a 3-time winner at the Rock, knows this 1.017-mile racetrack very well. When the leaders come in for the first series of scheduled pit stops, Kyle has an opportunity to beat them out of the pits and take the lead. But something goes wrong. The engine in the Pontiac is having trouble restarting, and the crew pushes it to get it going again. But the problem proves to be even bigger. A burned-out clutch brings the car behind the wall for repairs. Harry Gant's green and white Chevrolet is running well up in that Rockingham groove. In the later stages of the race, he passes Rusty Wallace to take the lead. But Rusty gets the lead back when his pit crew gets him off pit road first. From that point on, no one is able to catch Wallace's Pontiac as he rolls on to capture his first win of the season. A happy Penske crew celebrates with a dousing from the water bucket. Rusty's win comes just 1 week after taking that horrifying tumble at Daytona. But winning has a way of curing injuries. Before the next race at Richmond, there is a major announcement. 3-time Super Bowl winning coach Joe Gibbs resigns from the Washington Redskins. Gibbs wants to spend more time with his family and make racing a full-time commitment. Early in the Pontiac Excitement 400 at Richmond, Darrell Waltrip and Kyle Petty are running 1 and 2 respectively. But when Rick Mast's Ford loses an engine, that brings out the caution flag, and the 2 leaders come out of pit road to take on tires and gas. Rusty Wallace's crew beats everybody out of the pits, and for the moment, Rusty is in the lead. But Kyle Petty is running stronger this week. He'll get underneath Rusty out of turn 4, passing him for the lead. The 400-lap race on this 3/4-mile track begins to take its toll on car and driver. Bill Elliott's Ford puts oil on the track, and the yellow flag comes out. The turning point of the race follows. Davey Allison running 3rd behind Kyle Petty, and Rusty Wallace gets great service from the crew and exits just ahead of Wallace and Petty to take the lead. The race stays green, and Allison goes on to lead 152 of the final 157 laps. Great pit work by the Robert Yates team gives Allison his first win of the year.
Man, I tell you, you just can't believe what was going through my mind and what was, what the kind of pressure all these guys had to have on them after the first 2 races. But I'll say this, they stand behind me no matter what, and I stand behind them no matter what. And here we are today in victory lane again, and I think it's just a tribute to how hard these guys work. It makes my job easy.
Racing weekends are rarely called off, but when the blizzard of '93 hit the Atlanta Motor Speedway, the only thing teams could do was ride out the storm. Conditions at the Speedway were better the following weekend as pole sitter Rusty Wallace led the field for the start of the Motorcraft 500. It doesn't take long for Mark Martin's Ford to dominate the race. Going into lap 225, Martin led 140 of those laps, but that's where his troubles began. Engine failure forces Martin to bring the car to the garage. After a couple of lead changes, Jeff Gordon is in position to win the race, but the young rookie needs to come in for a fuel stop. Crew chief Ray Evernham lays out the situation via the radio.
We're going to go to lap 3:15, and then we're just going to do a gas and go. We're only going to do a stop and go. Does the car feel good, buddy? Is the car good? No, it's tight.
With just 12 laps to go, Gordon brings his car in for that splash of fuel.
Stop, stop. Go, 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 go.
The slip-up on pit road cost Jeff 3 positions. The lead goes to Morgan Shepherd, who rallies from tire problems to take the checkered flag for the Wood Brothers racing team. Shepherd's win in Atlanta is his 4th Winston Cup career victory. 3 of those have come at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. The calm before the storm at the legendary Darlington Raceway. Early on, Jeff Bodine and Dale Earnhardt get into a battle for the lead on the backstretch. Drivers like Rusty Wallace dive into these narrow corners to gain position. That technique, along with adapting to changing track conditions, helped drivers like Martin sneak up on and pass the leader. With sunny weather covering the raceway, Martin's Ford is tuned into the warm conditions and he dominates the event. Just over the halfway point, Bobby Labonte and Jimmy Spencer make contact with each other and hit the wall. Spencer's black and yellow Ford looks a little black and blue. With the caution flag out, the leaders come down pit road. Earnhardt's crew gets to work on a 4-tire change, while Mark Martin's crew does the same. The race off pit road is won by Earnhardt as he pulls his Chevy out of the pit lane just in front of Martin. Dark clouds have rolled in and Earnhardt now takes advantage of a cooler track to hold off Mark Martin. He further adjusts to the track by running a higher line around Darlington. Skillful driving propels Earnhardt to his first Winston Cup win of the year and 55th lifetime, tying him with Lee Petty on the all-time win list. It was shortly before 9:30 p.m., April 1st, when a small plane went down near Bluntville, Tennessee, killing all 4 passengers aboard, including the reigning Winston Cup champion, Alan Kulwicki. The crash site was just 6 miles from Tri-City Airport, where they were headed for the race in nearby Bristol, Tennessee. That night and the next day, news of Kulwicki's death comes as a shock to most of the racing community already in Bristol.
I went to the garage today and talked to all the guys, or as many as I could. It's like everybody wishes they could say goodbye.
With sleet falling, making the atmosphere even more sullen, fellow competitors and fans stood in silence as the Kulwicki race team transporter slowly made its way around the half-mile Bristol International Raceway. NASCAR's assistant flagman Mike Chaplin saluted the champion by dropping the checkered flag one final time. Becoming a champion stock car racer was always a possibility for Alan Kulwicki. His commitment to that goal began on the short tracks in his home state of Wisconsin. Eventually, Kulwicki's success on those Midwest tracks led to a decision in 1985 to try NASCAR stock car racing. That following season, Kulwicki earned Rookie of the Year honors, and soon offers came to drive for other teams. But Kulwicki turned down those offers, choosing instead to run his own race team. The desire to do things his way led him to the 1992 Winston Cup Series championship. Perhaps Kulwicki's brightest moment came at the season-ending awards banquet. The self-driven man paused to reflect on his journey against the odds.
If I've been an underdog or if I've been an example to a lot of the little guys out there, then I'm proud to fill that role. There's a lot of short track drivers and guys in Busch Grand National Racing and people all across the country coming into the sport, making it bigger and better day by day. You know, and hopefully, you know, some of them will look at it and say, well, if he did it, maybe I can do it too. And, you know, I hope I can.
Alan was, he was really a special guy, and I was so proud for him to win the championship in '92, and he knew that. And I think that meant a lot to him, and it meant something to me.
At age 38, Alan Kulwicki fulfilled what he set out to do. He became a Winston Cup champion on the racetrack and was a champion off the track as well. Kulwicki is not to be forgotten on this racing Sunday. 68,000 fans would stand together with the racing community for a moment of silence. But as Alan would have wanted it, racing's nature is to go on with the show. Rusty Wallace leads the field around the half-mile high-banked oval for the start of the 500-lap race. Bristol Raceway is known for its tight racing, and it doesn't take long for drivers to find trouble. Of the 35 starters, 23 are involved in accidents. Frequent trips to the pits or garage area make for a long, frustrating afternoon. Lap 344, front runner Mark Martin goes high out of the groove, allowing Dale Earnhardt and Rusty Wallace to slip under for the lead. Ricky Rudd brings out the yellow again when he gets a bump from Brett Bodine and goes spinning into the wall. Following the restart, Wallace works on Earnhardt and passes him for the lead. While those two race for the front spot, another pair of drivers are raising eyebrows for their ability to work through incredible odds. After starting dead last, Darrell Waltrip has moved up to 6th place, and Davey Allison, running on only 7 cylinders, is managing to hang on to 5th. But on a day when crippled cars hobble their way around the track, Rusty Wallace's Pontiac has the power to hold off Dale Earnhardt for his 2nd win of the season. Wallace, a competitor of Kulwicki's since their early racing days, honors his lost friend by turning his car around and taking a Polish victory lap. A lap that Kulwicki took after winning his first Winston Cup race in 1988.
After I took that checkered flag, the crew hollered, do the victory lap. He always was known for driving around backwards, you know, so I did that, and it was pretty emotional. I mean, a lot of people don't like Rusty Wallace, but that last lap when I went around backwards, I mean, I think the whole grandstands were cheering. It really felt good.
Bristol was just the beginning of a stretch of 3 consecutive weekends of short track racing. The next stop would be the old .625-mile North Wilkesboro Speedway up in the hill country of western North Carolina. Before the race, Felix Sabates, administrator of the Alan Kulwicki estate, called upon Jimmy Hensley to drive the Kulwicki race car. Just as the 400-lap race got underway, trouble appears in turn 4. Ford drivers Jeff Bodine and Mark Martin get into a tangle, both cars sustaining enough heavy damage to spoil any chance of being major players this day. Jeff Gordon ran into trouble early as well. The rookie brings out the caution flag here when his car gets sideways. Once things settled down, Sterling Marlin settled in. His Ford would lead the way for 190 laps, but just when it appeared Marlin might be on his way to his first Winston Cup win ever, his car begins to develop handling problems, and that's when Rusty Wallace entered the picture. With Marlin's car going away, Wallace was working his way closer to the front. He had been running conservatively to solve an oil and water temperature problem. But on lap 250, Rusty clears Marlin and takes the lead for good. With Rusty up front, a good battle for second was brewing between Davey Allison and Kyle Petty. Both cars touch and get sideways. Somehow, the two drivers were able to save their cars from disaster. Davey would go on to finish 4th, while Kyle would finish 2nd, just behind Rusty, making it a 1-2 finish for Pontiac. Once the track clears, Rusty spins the car around and again takes a Kulwicki victory lap. Rusty's domination of the short tracks continues at the Martinsville Speedway in Virginia. The black and gold Pontiac stays out in front for 409 of the 500 laps. Rusty's win at Martinsville made it 3 in a row and a clean sweep of the month of April. After 8 NASCAR Winston Cup Series races, Wallace maintains a 106-point lead over Dale Earnhardt. Davey Allison sits in 3rd, followed by Kyle Petty and Jeff Bodine. Talladega Superspeedway provides the next challenge for the drivers on the NASCAR Winston Cup circuit. Everyone wants to know if there will be a repeat performance of the Dale and Dale show as we saw at Daytona. Pole sitter Earnhardt led the 41-car field into what amounted to a 188-lap drag race. 3-wide racing would be the norm all afternoon in the 500-mile event. Passing in heavy traffic at 190 miles an hour eventually leads to trouble. Take a ride with Morgan Shepherd as this crash unfolds on lap 126. 5 cars litter the straightaway with sheet metal. The caution flag comes out. Former Winston Cup champion Terry Labonte gets the worst of it as he sustains shoulder and rib injuries. 30 laps later, Hut Strickland gets loose and just clips Brett Bodine, sending his car out of control and into the backstretch wall. Bodine walked away uninjured. Rusty Wallace takes the lead on the restart and appears to be sailing towards 4 in a row when it starts to rain. With the yellow out, Earnhardt in second place races Wallace back to the line and takes the lead. Rain continues to fall, and NASCAR decides to red flag the event until the weather clears. Several teams lobby to end the race right now, but the track conditions improve and the race will finish with just 2 laps to go. Drama unfolds on the final lap. Ernie Irvan, with help from Mark Martin, goes from 5th to 1st, overtaking Earnhardt here out of turn 2. Coming out of turn 4, the drivers scramble to the finish line as crew chief Tony Glover waves Ernie Irvan on to accept the checkered flag. Earnhardt, meanwhile, taps Wallace and sends his car flying across the finish line in a spectacular accident. The mangled race car lies motionless on the grass while safety crews hustle to retrieve the injured driver. Dale Earnhardt parks his car and walks over to see if Rusty is okay. Wallace heads to the hospital with a concussion and a broken left wrist. Winner Ernie Irvan pulls his Chevrolet into victory lane.
It was a real hairy race. You know, a lot of cars running good and a lot of 3 and 4 wide passing, and you know, most everybody used their head pretty good. And you know, a lot of people got bounced around with the air and the cars, and people could do a lot of things with you just by getting real close to you. And you know, a lot of guys collided. And just fortunate there wasn't very many wrecks. And you know, fortunate thing I heard Rusty's all right, and that's important. And we're all praying for him.
Talladega is over. The Winston Cup drivers are taking a much-deserved break. But there is news on the Winston Cup grapevine. Driver Jeff Bodine has purchased the racing team formerly owned by Alan Kulwicki. And just as Kulwicki did, Jeff will not only be the team owner, but will soon be its driver. Road course expert Tommy Kendall is hired to drive the new Bodine racer. Rusty Wallace is outfitted with a special cast, and he will race at Sears Point. It is race day in California's wine country. 94,000 fans pack the sunny hillsides near Sonoma, California, as Dale Earnhardt, for the second race in a row, leads the field from the pole position around the 2.5-mile Sears Point road course. Earnhardt would take the lead early, driving his black Chevy up and down and around the twisting 11-turn course, with the rest of the 43-car field in hot pursuit. Racing conditions at Sears Point call for heavy braking and sudden bursts of speed, and it doesn't take much to lose control, as Mark Martin, going for second place, finds out. Mark is able to regain control of his Ford, but the slip-up costs him 7 positions. Later in the race, Tommy Kendall's Ford goes for a spin, collecting race leader Dale Earnhardt. As everybody speeds by, Earnhardt suddenly finds himself back in the pack. Earnhardt's loss would be Jeff Bodine's gain. Following the restart, Bodine takes his Ford into the lead, with savvy road racers Ernie Irvan and Ricky Rudd right behind. With the laps winding down, the 3 drivers would race nose to tail. Coming through the S's, Bodine's car slips. Irvan pulls up to race side by side and sneaks past Bodine for the lead. Then Ricky Rudd tries to outbrake Bodine coming out of turn 11, but Bodine will again show the power to regain the lead. Before Bodine can pull away, Dorsey Schrader does some agricultural racing, bringing out the last caution flag. That sets up a 1-lap shootout. On the restart, as Bodine leads the way, cars get bottlenecked at turn 2 and collide. The leaders reach turn 5 and Bodine gets sideways and just saves the race car. Bodine will go on to win his first race of the year. Ernie Irvan squeezes by for second, while an emotional Jeff Bodine heads to victory lane.
Everyone is, since Bristol has dedicated the race wins to Alan Kulwicki, and of course that's what we did today. But by us buying that team last week and winning the first race out, it was really special. You know, we're all going to miss Alan tremendously in the sport, and so today was really a neat day.
The annual running of the Winston at Charlotte Motor Speedway is a can't-miss affair. It's racing's equivalent to the All-Star Game. No driver points would be awarded on this night, just plenty of cash. The 3-segment race would see Ernie Irvan capturing the first leg, Rick Mast in his black and white Ford taking segment number 2, and Dale Earnhardt holding off Mark Martin in the third segment. The win was worth $220,000 to Dale. Not bad take-home pay for Saturday night at the races.
I'm in a hurry and I don't know why. Alabama.
But payday at the next race wouldn't come as easily. The drivers would have to work a little overtime to complete the 600 miles that make up the Coca-Cola 600. Early on, the battle for position was fierce, filled with daring moves and blazing pit stops. Ted Musgrave's desire to move to the front is cut short. His Ford brushes the wall in turn 1, breaking an exhaust pipe. Dale Earnhardt doesn't have Musgrave's problems, but he is struggling. Down 15 seconds to Dale Jarrett. Earnhardt needs a caution flag to close the gap. In the view of NASCAR race control, he creates his own by bumping Greg Sachs and forcing his car to spin out. As Sachs's car comes back across the racetrack and nearly takes out Earnhardt. When Earnhardt brings his car into the pits during the caution, officials assess Earnhardt a 1-lap penalty. Despite protests from the Richard Childress team, Earnhardt will end up on the tail end of the lead lap. When Rusty Wallace crashes to bring out the yellow, Earnhardt is able to charge to the front on the restart. In the final few laps, Earnhardt checks his rear view mirror, sees other Chevys scrambling for the top 5 positions. But as Dale Earnhardt pulls away, the battle on the track is for 3rd and 4th. Dale Jarrett and Ken Schrader, they can't catch Earnhardt, nor can Jeff Gordon, who come home in 2nd spot. Earnhardt gets the win, his 2nd of the year. Gordon finishes 2nd. Jarrett, Schrader, and Irvin make it a top 5 for Chevrolet. Dover Downs International Speedway, home of the Monster Mile. It's one of the most challenging to drive on the NASCAR Winston Cup circuit. Trouble can strike anywhere at any time. For leader Rusty Wallace, his hopes for winning come to an abrupt end when Mark Martin attempts to pass him for the lead. But the 2 cars touch and Wallace hits the wall. He slides down the front stretch where he collects Jimmy Hensley. As Wallace's Pontiac comes to rest, Jeff Bodine's out-of-control Ford slides in and rocks Wallace again hard on the driver's side. Rusty would be all right. Dale Earnhardt, down 2 laps at one point, fights his way back up to the front and passes Martin with just over 60 laps to go. In the closing moments, he holds off a charging Dale Jarrett to take his 2nd win in a row and 3rd of the season.
You know, Goodyear had a good tire here. We just worked it awful hard. There's a lot real fast pace, and you know, we was running as fast at the end of the race as we were at the first. So we worked the car awful hard, and we got a lap or so down there on tire, you know, with a flat tire, and we had to work hard all day long. And Richard and Andy and all the guys in the engine department, they put a good race car under us. Real consistent car today, and that's why we got our laps back and was able to come back and win that race.
Dover had taken its toll on the cars and drivers, so the following week the teams were hoping for a kindler, gentler race at Pocono International Raceway. Unfortunately, that wish would not come true. On the 4th lap of the 500-mile race, Rusty Wallace heads to the garage with a blown engine.
We put a new engine in this morning. Everything went well. The car was running real good the first 4 or 5 laps there, and just locked up. I mean, it really locked up, too. I just shoved the clutch in and just saved it. So that's it. That's all I know.
As Rusty searches for the cause of his misfortunes, the door is left open for Dale Earnhardt to capitalize. Each time Dale crosses the start-finish line, he pads his lead in the Driver Points Championship. But that would be the only good news for Dale and the entire Richard Childress team on this day, because slowly but surely, Dale's car develops an oil leak and takes him out of contention. Engine problems would spoil the chances for other drivers, like Ernie Irvin, Mark Martin, and Jeff Bodine. On the other hand, Kyle Petty's Pontiac is out for a Sunday afternoon drive, leading 148 of 200 laps. Kyle cruises to his first win of the season.
It was tough, because it was tough when you run like that to keep that pace, to keep that running what you want to run, to keep the car doing what you want it to do. You know, and you're bad about going to sleep. And I was out there and I about half went to sleep because it got a little cloudy, the car got a little tighter, and I was just living with it. And I said, well, shoot, you know, I'm out this far out in front. Finally, I looked in the mirror and saw Harry coming. We had to make an adjustment, and when we made that adjustment, it turned the car loose again, and we took off, you know. So it's one of those deals. It can be an easy day, but it was a tougher day today.
It is Saturday at Michigan International Speedway. Members of the Jack Roush race team frantically pound out the damage to Mark Martin's car following a practice crash. Even with the damage, Martin and Roush believe the car is one of the strongest in the field. On Sunday, they proved to everyone that it really was. Shortly after the start of the Miller Genuine Draft 400, Martin builds a commanding lead, and like Kyle Petty the week before, appears to have this one in the bag. But races at Michigan are known to be won on fuel economy. In the final 50 laps of the 200-lap race, Martin is leading on borrowed time. Needing fuel, Martin hopes the yellow flag will show itself soon so he can bring his car in for gas and stay in the lead. But unfortunately, with 9 laps to go, his Ford runs out of fuel and he has to pull into the pits for a brief gas and go. With Martin out of the picture, Ricky Rudd, who had been driving his Chevrolet with less horsepower to get better fuel mileage, takes the lead. Better gas mileage also helps Jeff Gordon move up to second place, while Ricky Rudd's crew chief, Gary Dehart, can't believe it as his car takes the checkered flag, proving that the fastest car doesn't always win. The win for Rudd comes on the very weekend of his announcement that he'll be forming his own team for the 1994 season.
Well, a tip of the hat to Gary Dehart, Ricky Rudd and the boys. Some great fuel consumption numbers. They ended up in victory lane to wrap up the first half of the season. It's amazing to think in just a very few short days, everybody's going to be right back here at Daytona heading towards this start-finish line for the Pepsi 400. A look at the top 10 shows that Dale Earnhardt, with 3 wins and 3 second-place finishes, puts him in the lead in the Winston Cup Driver Point Championship with 2,157. Dale Jarrett, with his win here at Daytona and 7 top 5 finishes, is 213 points behind Earnhardt. Rusty Wallace, with 4 wins and 4 top 5s, manages to hang in 3rd spot. And perhaps the biggest stat for Rusty, 5 of those races he did not even finish. A look at 6th through 10th shows one surprise, rookie Jeff Gordon in 10th spot. With 4 top 5 finishes, Gordon looks to be the front runner for Rookie of the Year honors. Next up on the schedule, the Pepsi 400 here at Daytona. Sure, there's plenty of time for the drivers to make up a lot of ground and improve their ranking in the standings, but the stakes are getting a bit higher as well. You've got to deal now with the summertime heat, and you've also got to deal with that man named Earnhardt.
Only one word could describe the conditions of this July 4th weekend at Daytona: hot. With temperatures in the upper 90s, drivers had to find a way to beat the heat. Ken Schrader, he was especially hot. His pole-winning run was disallowed after NASCAR officials ruled that the carburetor in his car didn't meet NASCAR specifications. Schrader will have to start the race in 41st position. Ernie Irvan takes the green flag. As Irvan leads the field around, there is trouble in turn 1. Jimmy Hensley's Ford breaks loose and hits the wall. Take a look from Jeff Bodine's perspective as Jimmy Spencer in the yellow car suddenly collides with Hut Strickland. Bodine avoids disaster by keeping his line and driving straight through the accident. Kyle Petty and Bobby Labonte didn't have Bodine's luck as they get collected in the accident. Damage to Kyle's car causes him to breathe exhaust fumes, which later forces him to retire from the race. If Dale Earnhardt had any discomfort, it was in trying to make up a 9-second deficit to leader Sterling Marlin. Following a caution flag, Dale is able to catch Sterling and take the lead. But as was the case in February, Dale would be tested once again in the race's final lap. On the backstretch, Earnhardt, with Ken Schrader right behind, gets a little loose. Marlin makes a run to the inside. Earnhardt counters and blocks him out. That move would give Earnhardt enough cushion to stay in front and capture his 3rd win of the season. From the established speedway of Daytona, the NASCAR Winston Cup teams headed to the newest track on the racing schedule, New Hampshire International Speedway in Loudon, New Hampshire. New England race fans had been waiting a long time for this day to arrive, and they would not be disappointed. Early on, Jeff Burton gets loose in turn 2 and spins, taking Ken Schrader with him. Everyone else uses the wide New Hampshire turns to avoid trouble. One driver who managed to turn his early troubles around was Rusty Wallace. Qualifying 33rd for the race, Rusty and the Penske crew had their work cut out for them. But as they have done so many times this season, Rusty's pit crew made this race one to remember.
Before the first caution flag came out, I passed 21 cars on the racetrack. The car was that strong. And when we made the first pit stop, they took me from, I believe, 11th position to 1st. I took the lead in 100 laps and led everything from there on out. And the crew was so fast that day, and track position meant so much, and we had such a poor pit draw that those guys were absolutely on fire. And I made that first pit stop, and I won the inaugural race up there, and it was a real big deal.
Davey Allison finished the race in 3rd place. It was to be his last race. Just 24 hours after the event in New Hampshire, Allison was attempting to land his helicopter in the infield of the Talladega Superspeedway in Alabama. The helicopter spun out of control and crashed. Davey and his passenger, family friend, racing veteran Red Farmer were medevaced to a Birmingham, Alabama hospital. Family and friends of both men arrived at the hospital to await the news on their condition. Both men were critical. Although Red Farmer's injuries were not as extensive, an all-night vigil was held for both he and Davey. But by morning, the news had come.
Mr. Allison, 32 of Hueytown, Alabama, injured in a private helicopter crash yesterday at Talladega Superspeedway. Died this morning at Caraway Methodist Medical Center.
For the second time in 4 months, the stock car racing world mourned the loss of one of its brightest stars.
We appreciate the press and all the fans and the people around the country. It's been tough.
On the racetrack as well as off, what you saw out of Davey Allison was 110% commitment. In 1987, he trumpeted his arrival into Winston Cup racing by sitting on the front row of the Daytona 500. Later, he became the first rookie to win 2 races in his first season. Steadily, he climbed into the hierarchy of racing's finest drivers. 1992 may have been Davey's most challenging year as a driver. He won the Daytona 500, survived this crash at Pocono, and battled back to become a major player in the Winston Cup Point Championship race. Whether in victory or defeat, Davey Allison never lost his love for racing or forgot the people who made it possible. At Pocono, fans stood along with the entire racing family to once again honor the loss of one of the sport's brightest stars. Davey Allison would have wanted the show to go on, and so it did. Kyle Petty, who dominated the race at Pocono just a month ago, appears to be building another great run early in the Miller Genuine Draft 500. He passes Ernie Irvan here to take 2nd place. But later, a burned-out clutch spoils Kyle's hopes of repeating. With 23 laps remaining, the yellow flag comes out. Leaders Brett Bodine, Dale Earnhardt, and Rusty Wallace all come to pit road, taking on fuel and new tires. Rusty's crew gets him out first, and for the moment, Wallace has the lead. It looks as though the Penske pit crew has put Rusty in winning position yet again. But 6 laps later, Earnhardt is on Wallace's bumper. He sets Rusty up on the inside and passes him on the Long Pond straightaway to take the lead. Dale keeps his Chevrolet out of arm's reach for the remainder of the afternoon. Down the long front stretch he comes to accept his 5th checkered flag of the year. After the race, Earnhardt parks his Chevrolet on the front straightaway, where his crew gathers around the machine for a moment of prayer. Then, with a flag bearing the number 28 of Davey Allison in hand, Earnhardt speeds away clockwise around the racetrack in tribute to Allison and Alan Kulwicki. It was a day full of emotion. Before the race, the crowd of better than 100,000 paused to remember driver Davey Allison. Liz Allison, Davey's widow, thanked the fans for their love and support given to the Allison family during their time of loss. After the tribute, the green flag dropped for Bill Elliott on the 42-car field. Elliott would lead just 1 lap before losing the lead to Ernie Irvan, the first of 26 lead changes on the day. It didn't take long for the complexion of the race to change. On lap 56, IndyCar driver Robbie Gordon in the familiar black number 28 Ford gets a little too low on the track. He'll spin out and hit the wall, bringing out the caution flag. Fortunately, Gordon was all right, but it was not the kind of debut he wanted in his first race with the Robert Yates racing team. Just 14 laps later, on lap 70, 7 cars get together, and look at the result. Jimmy Horton's Chevrolet collides with Stanley Smith. Barrel rolls up, over, and out of the speedway. The first time that has ever happened at Talladega. Amazingly enough, Horton walked away with only bruises. Stanley Smith, on the other hand, didn't fare so well. He was critically injured and had to be helicoptered to a Birmingham hospital for emergency surgery. Once the race resumed, it came down to Dale Earnhardt, Ernie Irvan, Kyle Petty, Mark Martin, all making a bid for the win. But Earnhardt slips past Irvan and holds on for the win by a mere 6 inches. It was Earnhardt's second straight and 6th win of the year. Earnhardt would end the month of July just as he started, hot. Watkins Glen in the Finger Lakes region of New York is a legendary road course, and it's the site of the next NASCAR Winston Cup event, the Budweiser at the Glen. Many of the cars running on the 2.5-mile circuit struggled to keep it between the lines. Morgan Shepherd found both guardrails on this crash. Ricky Rudd, without brakes, slides into the grass and makes a great recovery move. He spins his car around and then steps on the accelerator to keep his car from further damage. Lake Speed, replacing Robbie Gordon as driver of the Robert Yates car, is running in the top 5 when transmission problems sent him to the back of the pack. Other cars up on jacks with gearbox problems include Dale Jarrett, Ken Schrader, and Tommy Kendall. Frontrunner Mark Martin loses his lead when he is forced to make an extended pit stop. The problem is with a lug nut on the right rear wheel. It simply refuses to come off. Finally it does, and the crew is able to put fresh tires on Mark's car. The race comes down to 2 wrong moves. With only 5 laps remaining, leader Kyle Petty loses control of the number 42 Pontiac. Then second place runner Dale Earnhardt miscalculates the direction of Petty's damaged car and runs square into Kyle. The wreck parted the seas from Mark Martin, who made his way back up to the front of the pack. Martin ends up cruising home for his first win of the year.
You know, with 8 laps to go, we were awful far back, and I couldn't believe it. They threw the green, and we were running 3rd in a lap or so, and we were coming. But you know, opportunity has to be on the good side once in a while. We've been out there hammering, and we haven't had a break all year long, and it made it easy when Kyle and Dale crashed.
Martin's stroke of good luck and another fast race car made him an early favorite to win the Champion Sparkplug 400 at Michigan International Speedway. The race began with Martin looking awfully strong, but not as strong as Ricky Rudd. At one point, Rudd builds a lead of more than 10 seconds over the rest of the field. But on lap 125, Rudd pulls his Chevrolet behind the wall. A water leak ending his afternoon. That left the race to Mark Martin, whose race car this day is untouchable. With Mark about to accept the checkered flag, the best race is coming into view. It's a battle for 5th. Ted Musgrave makes a great move to edge out Rusty Wallace and Lake Speed at the finish line. While that drama played out, Martin celebrated as his good fortune continued.
So a victory for Mark Martin and the Jack Roush team, and with their ties to the state of Michigan, that win was a huge one for them. We are here now at Victory Lane at Daytona International Speedway. This is a most famous piece of real estate in the world of motorsports, but there's another very famous piece of real estate as well at the corner of 16th Street and Holman Way in Indianapolis, Indiana. That's where the Winston Cup team's headed, right from Michigan. A test session at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
The Indianapolis Motor Speedway, a track steeped in racing tradition. In the past, these hallowed garages have housed only the finest in IndyCar racing machines. But now they are shared with NASCAR's finest as the Winston Cup drivers came to the Brickyard to test for next August's Brickyard 400.
I'll tell you, it was a thrill to go around there. I was the first car out this morning and first one to make it back to the finish line. So It was quite a thrill. Very excited.
The speeds are there. It's going to be a real horsepower racetrack, and I probably believe most of the paths going to be going on the straightaways and maybe exiting the corners. But it's going to be fun, no doubt about it.
For some drivers, the trip to Indianapolis was almost like being back home.
I think every team in here has been waiting for this moment this year to when they heard the announcement. You know, we just all couldn't wait to get here. And the first time I drove out of this garage here and drove onto that racetrack, it was probably one of the neatest feelings I've ever had in a race car.
NASCAR's invasion of the Brickyard didn't go unnoticed. Over 100,000 fans showed up to welcome their neighbors from the south to the newest NASCAR track. Many of the drivers showed their appreciation by taking time out to sign autographs and talk with the fans. On the track, the drivers worked together to simulate actual race conditions. Indianapolis's long straightaways and relatively flat corners made for some dicey passing situations. On the whole, the 2 days helped the teams get a fix on the kinds of speeds and tire wear that they will see at the Speedway. What was certainly clear, though, in the minds of many during these 2 days, next year's inaugural Brickyard 400 will be the hottest ticket in town. Following the excitement at Indianapolis, it's back to racing at the beloved half-mile bowl of concrete, Bristol International Raceway. The race started out in typical Bristol fashion, with cars spinning and sliding out of the race. Kyle Petty's hopes of winning end here when he just can't get his car to straighten out on the front stretch. The dominant car on the evening belongs to Kenny's brother, Rusty. With the help of some lightning-fast pit stops, Wallace is able to lead 410 of the total 500 laps. But on lap 487, Mark Martin squeezes underneath Rusty to take the lead. He holds off Wallace and takes his third win in a row. A fatigued Martin brings his Ford into victory lane. A welcome sight, considering Mark had to spend extra time in the pits again because of loose lug nuts. Most reporters covering the Winston Cup beat know a headlining story when they see one. Mark Martin's recent success would naturally be a hot topic. Or would it?
Under the car for
just before the Labor Day race in Darlington, Ernie Irvin becomes the new full-time driver for the Robert Yates racing team. No surprise was the weather. A typical summer rainstorm puts the damper on the start of the Mountain Dew Southern 500. Rain delays the start by almost 3 hours. Finally, the race is started under yellow flag conditions. But once under green, Ernie Irvin shows everyone that he has adapted well to the Ford. He and Dale Earnhardt trade the lead and even trade paint a few times. While those two would battle for the lead in the first 100 laps, charging right along and biding his time is Mark Martin. His Ford dials into the track and eventually runs down Earnhardt on lap 189 to take the lead. Later in the race, Irvin brings out a caution flag when his car spins at the entrance to pit road. He gets the car pointed in the right direction and heads back out to an eventual 5th place finish. Ernie's spin gives NASCAR an opportunity to address the impending darkness. Crews and drivers are warned that the race will end in just 10 laps. On the restart, Martin gets a good jump and drivers Brett Bodine, Rusty Wallace, and Dale Earnhardt are unable to reel him in. Mark takes the 10-lap dash and accepts his 4th checkered flag in a row. Martin's sweep of the month of August and early September tightens the NASCAR Winston Cup point chase. The standings after 22 races look like this. Dale Earnhardt hangs on to first place by 304 points over second place Wallace. Mark Martin is in third, just 3 points behind Rusty. Dale Jarrett holds down the 4th spot, and Morgan Shepherd is in 5th. Under the lights of Richmond International Raceway, Mark Martin stands a good chance of tying the modern stock car era record of 5 wins in a row. Could he do it? Martin got his shot at the lead and the record in the Miller Genuine Draft 400 when leader Rusty Wallace is black flagged for jumping a restart. You could almost sense the sparks flying inside the black and gold Pontiac as Rusty brings his car in for a stop and go penalty. Running well on this night is Bill Elliott, who for most of the season really hasn't been running all that well. Owner Junior Johnson knows that it's only a matter of time before his driver makes a charge for the lead. Rusty Wallace has made a charge back to the front of the pack. On lap 242, Rusty, with help from his speedy crew, get a break in track position. A great pit stop closes the gap between he and leader Mark Martin. 16 laps down the road, Wallace seizes the opportunity and passes Martin to regain the lead. Near the end, racing gets a little physical. Ricky Rudd gives Derek Cope a little tap from behind, which sends Cope's Ford sliding down the back straightaway. The racing gets even a bit rougher down the stretch when everybody tries to leave pit road at once. It sends Ricky Rudd into a spin. He recovers nicely and gets his Chevy back on track. The late cautions help Dale Earnhardt resolve a nagging clutch problem, enough at least to take over third spot. Bill Elliott tries to reel in Wallace, but has to settle for a season-high second-place finish as Rusty hangs on to win his 6th of the season. By winning at Richmond, Rusty was able to narrow the gap on the point leader, Dale Earnhardt. The title chase now moved on to Dover Downs, where Rusty stood to either gain a bunch or lose a lot. In the Splitfire Sparkplug 500 at Dover Downs, teams gamble on lowering the tire pressure to improve handling, but the strategy backfires. Mark Martin rolls the dice, but his car pays for it. After his car hits the wall, Mark tries to ride his fiery wreck to pit road. Eventually, though, he'll choose the wiser option. He just bails out. The turning point of the race comes on the restart at lap number 381. Rusty Wallace bumps into Hut Strickland, who in turn takes out Ricky Rudd and Dale Earnhardt. In the closing 100 laps following the controversial accident, Wallace comes from 2 laps down to outrun Darrell Waltrip and Ken Schrader to take his 7th win of the season.
Every time somebody has a wreck and the guy who hits first is the guy who's at fault. To me, I took on a normal restart and the 27 car just didn't go. I tapped him in the rear and turned him sideways. And when he turned him sideways, he got with the 3 car. And when the 3 car went, that's what made all the noise. That's what got all the press right there, that one there. So it's too bad it happened. I mean, I didn't mean for it to happen, but that's it.
A touch of pride is in the air at the Martinsville Speedway. The Fords, once driven by Davey Allison and Alan Kulwicki, occupy the front row. Jeff Bodine and Ernie Irvin, now driving those cars, are hoping to honor the former drivers with a win in the Goodies 500. The race gets underway with Jeff Bodine showing the way. But at Martinsville, close quarters racing soon spells doom for the drivers. Darrell Waltrip, trying to get up front, gets his car out of shape and collects Sterling Marlin and Bobby Labonte. Jimmy Hensley, driving for the injured Rick Wilson in the 44 Pontiac, gets hammered as well. Ernie Irvin would take over the lead from Bodine on lap 32 and drive almost uncontested throughout the day. Most of the action on the track surrounded the battle between points leader Rusty Wallace and Dale Earnhardt. Wallace gets the upper hand here. Unfortunately for Earnhardt, problems with his Chevy's rear axle causes him to exit the race with 60 laps to go. He'd finish in 29th spot. But the emotion belongs to Irvin and the Robert Yates Racing Team as the 28 car accepts the checkered flag and rolls into victory lane.
Whole time I kept thinking, you know, Davey never made it to victory lane here. Bobby never has. And everybody had their own idea what they wanted to do for victory lane. I've been wearing this shirt since I started driving this car. I knew we could do it. This is for Davey.
5 races remain. Though Ernie Irvin sits on the pole for the 2nd race in a row, the battle for number 1 is heating up between Dale Earnhardt and Rusty Wallace. Before the entire field can even accept the green flag for the Tyson Holly Farms 400, there's problems everywhere. Cars at the start-finish line getting bent every which way but loose. Watch again from Morgan Shepherd's car as he comes to the start-finish line. In the aftermath, the cars of Jeff Gordon, Jeff Bodine, and Shepard sit helplessly on the front straightaway. The lead changed hands several times early as Kyle Petty, Rick Mast, and Terry Labonte all looked strong before giving way to Rusty Wallace on lap 160. But Dale Earnhardt starts to close in on Rusty, and on lap 239, Dale takes the lead. As the day wears on, the Chevrolet of Earnhardt won't respond to Dale's desires to drive low on the racetrack. Earnhardt's high line around the speedway helps Rusty Wallace reel him in. And so, with 101 laps remaining, Rusty passes Earnhardt for good and holds on for his 8th victory of the year. Rusty's win brings him closer to Earnhardt in the point championship. With 4 races to go, here's how it looks. Dale Earnhardt with 3,877 points. He maintains a 72-point margin over second place Rusty Wallace. Dale Jarrett holds on to third over Mark Martin, and Morgan Shepard rounds out the top 5. The nonstop focus on the Winston Cup point battle was somewhat silenced when the teams returned to the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Rookie Jeff Gordon reminded Winston Cup veterans that the future was coming fast by capturing the Busch pole for the start of the Mellow Yellow 500. On the first lap, Ernie Irvin's Ford is just flying. He overtakes Gordon's Chevrolet going into turn 3. And in short order, Ernie Irvin opens up a commanding lead. A few laps later, Dale Earnhardt has moved up from his 9th starting spot to challenge Gordon for 2nd. The 2 race into the corner side by side, but for the moment, it's Gordon who's in control. The race is run virtually caution-free until Todd Bodine loses an engine and crashes into the wall coming out of turn 4. Earnhardt manages to catch Irvin on lap 162 and take the lead. Dale only leads for 3 laps, but by doing so picks up 5 valuable bonus points. A late caution flag sets up the final 22 laps of racing. Take a look at Martin, Earnhardt, and Wallace battling it out for 2nd. Martin gets a little out of shape but keeps his cool and holds the high ground. The win goes to Ernie Irvin, who led a record-setting 328 of 334 laps. Martin follows in 2nd with Earnhardt 3rd. The Robert Yates Racing Team has set up another perfect car. In Victory Lane, Irvin celebrates his 3rd win of the year with his baby daughter, Jordan. It's the AC Delco 500 at Rockingham, and Harry Gant is on the move. His tactic of racing his car up high on the groove works as he passes Jimmy Spencer to take the lead. Spencer was having a great run on this fall afternoon when disaster strikes during a scheduled pit stop. Rounded lug nuts make it nearly impossible for the crew to take off his left rear tire. Eventually, the tire is changed, but Spencer is now 3 laps down to the leader, Gant. Later, the yellow caution flag comes out when Jimmy Horton spins out in turn 3. The leaders come out of pit road to load up on tires and fuel. Rusty Wallace, who quietly has moved up to 2nd place, beats Gant and company out of the pits to take the lead. Later, Dale Earnhardt, running in 2nd, tries to close in on Wallace, but doesn't have enough laps left to do it as Rusty captures his 9th win of the year. The victory moves Wallace and the Penske team to within 72 points of Earnhardt in the driver point standings. 9 victories, that's quite an accomplishment for any driver. But for Rusty Wallace in 1993, it hasn't been enough to catch the elusive Dale Earnhardt.
Yeah, when you win 9 races, you're not supposed to be unhappy. And I'm not unhappy. But on the other hand, when you do that much, you hope that you've done enough that you can be up there for the championship. And so we've got to give it our best, and we've done it that. We've come too far to give up now.
Under overcast skies on Halloween Day, the Slick 50 500 starts out as a treat for Rusty Wallace. His Pontiac has moved up to the top 5 and appears to be closing in on frontrunners Mark Martin and Ernie Irvin when something goes wrong. A flat tire forces Rusty to bring his Pontiac in for an unscheduled stop. But the car has bigger problems. The sway bar, which stabilizes the front end of the automobile, is broken. Though tremendous effort is given to solving the problem, Wallace is forced to drive an ill-handling race car for the remainder of the afternoon. In the race's final laps, the two Fords of Mark Martin and Ernie Irvan race side by side. Suddenly, Irvan's car gets loose. Somehow he saves it, but loses ground to Martin, who cruises the rest of the way to his first win at Phoenix and his 5th win of the year. Dale Earnhardt's 4th place finish in the race all but assures him of the 1993 NASCAR Winston Cup title. Rusty Wallace's 29th place finish puts him 126 points behind Earnhardt with 1 race to go. Martin stays ahead of Dale Jarrett in their battle for 3rd place title money. And so it has come down to one final race at the Atlanta Motor Speedway to decide the championship. The weekend starts out with a scare for Earnhardt fans as Dale loses control of his Chevrolet during Friday's practice session. Earnhardt just shrugged off the incident and later came back to qualify his backup car in 19th spot on the starting grid. Ironically, he'll start the Hooters 500 right next to Rusty Wallace, who qualified his Pontiac in 20th. As the green flag drops, pole sitter Harry Gant gets a great jump on the 42-car field and leads the first 22 of 328 laps. The Atlanta track, which has been described as being rather slick all weekend, eventually takes its toll. Several drivers lose control of their machines and end up sliding into the wall, with cars dropping out of the event early due to accidents or mechanical problems. The point championship is decided sooner than expected. Dale Earnhardt needed to finish 34th or better to clinch the title, so when T.W. Taylor's car became the 8th retiree of the afternoon, Earnhardt's 6th championship was secured. With the championship in hand, Dale went after the victory. On lap 225, Earnhardt gets a little too high in the groove. Out in turn 3, he'll make contact with Greg Sachs. Only a fine piece of driving by Sachs saves his race car from disaster. But damage to Earnhardt's car affects its aerodynamics, and slowly, Dale's Chevrolet drops back out of contention. Though mathematically eliminated from winning the championship, Rusty Wallace is driven to finish the final race in first place. His Pontiac would find its way to the front several times to lead a total of 189 laps. Late in the race, Darrell Waltrip, gambling on fuel mileage, has the lead. But with 4 laps to go, Wallace shoots past Waltrip to take the lead for good and cruises to his 10th win of the year. As Earnhardt crosses the start-finish stripe in 10th, the celebration begins for he and the Richard Childress racing team. On the cool-down lap, Earnhardt, the champion, and Wallace, the race winner, drive side by side backwards around the Atlanta Motor Speedway, holding flags representing Alan Kulwicki and Davey Allison, who died earlier in the year. A fitting tribute by the two drivers who had competed so hard together all season long.
It was a really great victory. I'm really proud of the whole team for what they've done. It was a neat victory, and we're remembering Alan and Davey and everybody, and I'd like to congratulate Dale on a job well done. It was just a really neat deal, but hey, we got it, 10 wins. That's nothing to be ashamed of, and what a car flew today. It really ran great.
Got to thank this crew. The good Lord looked after us all year, and the crew did a great job. I just can't say enough about them. We got to going for it after we had it locked up, and I got in trouble and got loose and got into sacks and knocked the side on the car. It really hurt the aerodynamics, but you know, we had a shot, I think, at running with them, you know, being one of the contenders. But that's racing, and we'll take that championship.
Taking the championship, winning races, being a factor in every race this season, that is what propelled Dale Earnhardt to racing's biggest prize. He may not have won a bundle of races, but somehow, in a way that only Dale Earnhardt knows, he outlasted them all. With darkness falling on the Atlanta Motor Speedway, Earnhardt and crew rejoice a championship season that they won't soon forget. Well, Rusty Wallace's win and Dale Earnhardt's championship here in Atlanta put the finishing touches on a most exciting 1993 racing season. But as exciting as it was in the NASCAR Winston Cup Series, so too the excitement level for NASCAR's other Touring Series. And I thought we'd take a moment right here to honor some of those Touring Series champions. The Busch Grand National Series, often the proving ground for tomorrow's Winston Cup stars, had a terrific points battle. Steve Grissom, a native of Gadsden, Alabama, held off David Green to earn his first championship. Up in the Northeast, the Busch Grand National North Series champion was Dick McCabe, the Irish Angel from Kennebunkport, Maine. And NASCAR's modified division, run mostly in the New England states, crowned Rick Fuller as their champion. Well, win or lose, our congratulations go to all of the drivers who campaigned under the NASCAR banner in 1993. And of course, a special congratulations to Dale Earnhardt, winning his 6th NASCAR Winston Cup Series championship, one now behind the legendary mark of 7 set by Richard Petty. Will Dale Earnhardt pick up number 7? Well, we'll have to wait and find out together next year. Until then, I'm Eli Gold. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you at the races.